Thank you, Madam President. The quote is pretty simple. I think we need to have as high standards as possible. I don't think we should be lowering them. That's a quote from Governor Evers, and it was given after the superintendent, Jill Underly, ordered the Department of Public Instruction to change our standards, our academic standards in Wisconsin. They were getting rid of those standards that actually Governor Evers put in place when he was then superintendent. And so we drafted this bill, AB 1. We had a committee hearing on it, and we had the Department of Public Instruction come in and talk for a very long time about the process they used for making these changes and what was done. And as I said I would have loved to have the superintendent there, by the way. Superintendent Underly did not show up. She sent a deputy superintendent, Mr. McCarthy, good guy, very open, talked to him about a lot of things, worked with him on the literacy bill last year. But I said, Tom, you're going to bring in your experts that are going to talk about these changes and talk about why they're necessary, and it's going to go on for a long time, and I'm going to walk out, and if there's a camera in front of me, I can do it in 10 seconds. Wisconsin parents want high standards. Governor Evers agrees. You lowered the standards as DPI. You did it in a manner that was not transparent at all. Governor Evers said it was a mistake. He criticized the process. He was right about both accounts. And we need to do better. We need to go back. And he laughed, and here we are. Why do we need to go back to the standards? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's giving a false impression of how we're doing. They dummy down the standards. They juice the numbers. Parents are getting a false impression of where their kids are at, where we are in Wisconsin. And that's not right. But also in doing this, in the process that they did, we can't compare year to year anymore. They've messed it up. They've altered the dial so much, we will never know where your kid was at 4th grade or where he is now at 6th, 7th. Go back where your son was compared to your daughter in a previous year. We cannot go back. We cannot go back and look. Now, they say they're working on it, but we're not sure for sure if they're ever actually going to get a true apples-to-apples comparison. And that's quite tragic when we lost academic years because of the pandemic, and we're trying to see if our kids caught up. The kids that I call them the COVID kids. They're in 2nd grade now. They're in 10th grade. They lost a whole year because of the pandemic. They fell behind. We can't see if they're caught up. Also, in relation to the literacy bill, a lot of districts have jumped ahead, even though the funding is frozen and all that stuff and goes beyond this bill. But a lot of districts have gone ahead and changed their curriculum. They can't compare if it's going to work. They don't know if it's going to work. And that's why Governor Evers said it was a mistake. He didn't like the process. It was done behind closed doors with 88 people that we still aren't sure who they were, got into this session, had to sign non-disclosure agreements, which have turned out actually makes sense, I must admit, because they were talking about the actual test questions and they didn't want those getting out. But the process was not open by any means. It was flawed. And so here we are, we're trying to go back to where Governor Evers set the standards, where people in Wisconsin expect the standards to be high. I get that on that. I try to again, want the superintendent to be there. Dr. Underly did not come to our hearing. In fact, she hasn't appeared before any committee hearing in my time in the legislature, either in the Senate or in the Assembly either. And it's a confusing issue. The way they changed it was confusing. And in her own words, it's confusing. An open records request from the Institute for Responsible Government had this email come out in June from the superintendent. This is from Jill Underly to her staff. I need help with this. I truly don't understand what I'm looking at for my approval. And with all this other nonsense going on with literacy, I want to make sure we're not throwing more fuel onto this fire. First of all, I'd like to really know and ask her what she meant by nonsense, because that was a bill negotiated with her department, but nonetheless, it was nonsense. The crummy thing is, she goes on, I'm an educator and I don't understand this, so how are parents supposed to understand this too? For example, what does proficient mean versus advanced? That they are a grade level versus next grade level? I just hate this stuff so much. What she's talking about there at the end is not only did they change the scoring methods, they've changed the labels that get placed on, because they were told that if you tell a kid that he is below basic, it hurts his feelings. So they changed that to developing. You know what hurts a kid's feelings? Not being able to read. What are we doing here? So this bill goes back to the standards that Governor Evers set when he was superintendent. It allows us to change back the dials, and we move on. And, you know, you look at some of the standards that were set, and when I say why the scores are inflated, the changes. Milwaukee Public Schools jumped from 15.8 proficiency in reading to 23.4 in 1 year because of the tweak. Fourth grade reading score changes. They jumped from Wisconsin from 44% to 52%. And our NAEP, which is lined up to national standards, actually show we decreased. There's like a 20% gap. Did our kids magically get that brilliant over the last year? No. We changed the dials. So this bill simply says, let's go back. And one of the things that was put on it was a very astonishingly high fiscal number from the Department of Public Instruction, $1 million to go back. How did they change it without asking for $1 million before? They did that with internal dollars in their budget. They went through this process. They can do it again, and we should do it again. And so this bill can do that, and I hope the governor signs it, because it was his words. He agrees it was a mistake.